there was a funeral for him in the little temple, and he was buried on the mountain-side, beside the other monks who attended the little temple in the centuries that had gone before. The full of the moon came and went, and the waning moon rode high in the sky, and the master of yin-yang was still alive. And more than that, he could feel his fear dying within him. He took the lacquer box, the black key, and the little porcelain plates, and he wrapped them up in the square of silk, which showed only his face now, for of the other painted figure there was nothing more than the shadow of a stain, and, at the dead of night, he buried them beneath the roots of a tree that had long ago been struck by lightning, and was twisted into a most disturbing shape. He was relieved that he was still alive. He was happier than he had ever been. Those were good days for the Onmyoji. The moon was again full in the sky when he was visited by a maiden of high birth, who wished to consult him about propitious days. A mist hung heavy in the air that day, and it twined its tendrils through the Onmyoji's house. She paid for his wisdom with gold coins so old they were almost featureless, and with rice of the finest quality. Then she left his house in a magnificent ox-drawn carriage. The master of yin-yang told a servant to follow her on horseback, and to discover who the maiden was, and where she lived. Several hours later the servant returned. He said that the maiden lived in an old but impressive house several rai north of Kyoto, and described the area to the Onmyoji. Days passed. The Onmyoji could not get the maiden's face out of his mind, nor the way she walked, respectful and seductive at the same time. He imagined possessing her, touching her, owning her. When he closed his eyes at night, the maiden was there, her hair so long and so very black, her eyes the shade of green leaves, uncurling in the spring sunlight, her feet which moved like tiny mice, the delicacy of her hand upon her fan, her voice like a song heard in a dream. When he made love to his concubine, he found she did not interest him, and he returned to his room, where he wrote a poem, comparing his feelings about the maiden to the autumn wind, stirring the surface of a pool that had until now been placid, and he gave it to the servant to take to the maiden. The servant brought back her reply, a poem in which she spoke of the reflection of the moon in the pool stirred by the wind. His heart swelled within him when he read it, astonished by the grace and ease of her brushstroke. He asked his oracles about her. The old woman laughed at him, cackling so hard he thought she would die, and said nothing. The young woman with the cold hand said, "The man she loved is dead." "Good," said the Onmyoji. "When is the most propitious day to visit her?" But at that the three women all giggled and laughed as if they were mocking him, and angrily he left their house. On the following evening he arrived at the maiden's house. He begged her pardon for his arrival, claiming that he was forced by knowledge gained from his divination to leave his house, travelling to the north, which was an auspicious direction, and that he needed to stay overnight in the north before leaving in the morning for the city. She invited him to dine with her. The house was magnificent. He and the maiden dined alone, and through the evening her servants brought them the finest foods he had ever eaten. "I have never tasted anything this fine," he said, nibbling some exotic meat in a cold sauce. "And to think," she said, "if I had not been here, you might have been forced to sit in the tumble-down ruins of an old and empty house, and to dine upon mice and spiders." At the end of the meal he made it clear that he would like to enjoy her physical favours. She poured them both sake, and told him that it was quite out of the question. "For why, when I wish to be second in your affections?" she asked. "You have a wife, you have a concubine. What would I be?" "I will be yours, and yours alone," he told her. "You say that," she said, "but after you have made love to me, then your wife and your concubine will seem more attractive, and I will be left alone here. I do not think you should stay the night here. Your carriage will take you to another house for the night. If ever you are free to love me, and me alone, then come back." "It is as good as done," he said. "But I can never be yours," she told him, "while you have your house. For I should want you to come and live in my house with me. Indeed, my house would be yours, and would be yours forever. But if you had a house, you might sigh after it, and one day you would leave me for your own house." She shifted then minutely, and the Onmyoji imagined that he caught the briefest glimpse of the white swell of her breast within her robe. "I shall take care of my house," said the Onmyoji, his mind a single burning flame of lust. "And there is one more thing," said the maiden, her green eyes burning into his, "and that is your magic. How can I be your love and your wife if I knew that you commanded Tengu and Oni, and that in your scrolls you had the knowledge to change me into a bird if I displeased you? She bent over to pour him more sake, which caused her robe to fall open a little more, and the Onmyoji saw a white breast, tipped by a nipple as pink as the sunset. At this the Onmyoji leapt to grab hold of her, but the maiden deftly moved back, avoiding his grasp as if she had barely noticed it, and she bade him good night. When he realized that their time together was over, he sighed so loudly that it seemed that the hinges of the world were groaning. There was a madness that came on him then, or so they said. On the following night there were 2 fires in the city of Kyoto. The first house to burn was that of the Onmyoji, the 17th finest house in all the city. He was not suspected of any involvement, having left the house earlier that day in a cart loaded high with all his scrolls and his implements of magic. It was a tragic fire, for his wife and his concubine and all his servants were asleep inside the house as it blazed, and it took their lives. The other house to burn was a hovel on the outskirts of the city, in the neighbourhood of ill repute. It was a house where 3 women lived, who were said to have been fortune-tellers and herbalists. No one knows if they were in the house when it burned, for the only remains that were found in the ashes were the bones and skulls of babes and of small children. It was evening when the master of Yin-Yang arrived at the house of the maiden who had won his heart. "My house is burned," he said, "and my women are dead. I have no one to love but you, and nowhere to be but here." She smiled at him then, a smile of such happiness that it seemed to him that the sun had come out and shone on him alone. "And in this cart," he told her, "I have my knowledge, all my scrolls, all my magical implements, all the amulets and wands and names that give me power over the spirits and demons, that allow me to tell the future. All of it I have brought here to lay at your feet." The maiden nodded, and several of her servants took the cart and unpacked its contents, and took the things that he had brought away. "There," said the Onmyoji, "now I am yours, and there is nothing that can come between us." "There is still something between us," she told him. "Your robe. Take it off. Let me see you as you are." The madness and the lust mingled in the Onmyoji's veins. He stepped out of his robe and stood there, naked in the misty twilight. She picked up his robe and held it. He opened his arms wide to embrace the maiden. The maiden stepped closer to her. "Now," she whispered, "you have no house, no wife, no concubine, no magic, no clothing. You have lost it all, and so it is time that I gave something to you." She reached up her hands to his head and pulled it close to her lips, as if she were about to kiss him just above one eye. "But you shall keep your life," she said, "for he would not have wanted me to kill you." A fox's teeth are very sharp, and with a flick of her tail she was gone. The master of Yin-Yang was found the next morning in the grounds of a house that had been abandoned 20 years earlier, when the official whose family had owned it was disgraced. Some said it was guilt that brought him there, for 15 years earlier the Onmyoji had been in the service of the lord who had caused the downfall of that family. He was naked and ashamed and quite mad. Some said it was the loss of his wife and his house in a fire that had driven him to madness. Others claimed that it was the loss of his eye, while the superstitious, speaking amongst themselves, claimed that it was fox magic. His old associates avoided him in the days that were to come, when they saw him begging in the streets, others with only rags to cover his nakedness, only a rag about his head to hide the ruins of his face. He lived in misery and squalor and madness until he died, with no happiness to be found anywhere in his life save the momentary happiness of dreams. But of how he lived, beyond this point, and of how he died, all the tales are silent. "But what good did it do?" asked the raven. "Good," said the king of all night's dreaming. "Yes," said the raven. "The monk was to die, and he died. The fox who tried to help him failed. The Onmyoji lost everything. What good did it do, your granting her wish?" The king stared away at the horizon. In his eye a single star glinted and was gone. "Lessons were learned," said the pale king. "Events occurred as it was proper for them to do. I do not perceive that my attention was wasted." "Lessons were learned?" asked the raven, bristling its neck feathers, and raising its black head high. "By whom?" "By all of them, particularly the monk." The raven croaked once in the back of its throat, and hopped from one foot to the other. It appeared to be hunting for words. The king watched it patiently with dark eyes. "But he is dead," said the raven after some time. "And come to that, so are you, my raven. But there were lessons in here for you as well." "And did you also earn a lesson?" asked the raven, who had once been a poet. But the pale king chose not to answer, and remained wrapped in silence, staring at the horizon, and after some time the raven flapped heavily away into the sky of dreams, and left the king entirely alone.